Welcome to our webinar. Welcome to our webinar. Another journey into urgency-based selling. Today's theme is predictable sales growth using the themes of urgency and planning. Thanks again for joining us. We'll have some key concept reviews and some practical applications, things you could do immediately. We'll take questions at the end, and you should have access to the battle plan, a PDF you can download as one way to improve your planning for key accounts. Now, I've noticed over the years that sales growth can be impeded by excessive focus on existing customers. In other words, sometimes salespeople say, I don't have time to call on new prospects because I'm taking care of an existing customer. Now, this happens for a number of reasons, including risk aversion. Now, the material I'm about to show you comes from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, and who is associated with a discussion of risk aversion. What he found was, this is from page 315, that in going from a 95% probability to 100% probability, in other words, a 5% improvement, people see 20% of the value of the offer in that improvement. Because we're risk averse, we pay extra for certainty. It's certainly the basis behind insurance. And I think it helps explain our time allocation with existing customers. The payment we make for the certainty that we keep the existing customer, the certainty is paying with our time. So part of motivating ourselves to take on new prospects is both a comfort that we're taking care of our existing customers, and where possible, not taking too much time away from them. Now, this point here, the certainty, illustrates the importance of our proving materials, which we will cover a little later in this webinar. We're going to talk about 5 ways to predictably grow sales. Maybe the easiest one is close a fast-growing customer, I don't know, like Amazon or Apple. That way our sales grow automatically. Increase sales to existing customers. Engage your big fans. Become the expert, promote your personal brand. Earn the right to manage by PIKs. Build your prospect list prudently. Now we're going to talk about points 2 to 6. That's in red. And you'll notice I put a blue box around points 2 and 3 because this is how we could grow sales without taking a lot of time away from or adding to talking to our existing customers. So it helps with that risk aversion issue mentioned. Before we get into the specifics, just a reminder that growing sales usually requires bold vision, bold behavior, an entrepreneurial mindset. Now, one way to frame this is the difference between social selling and business selling. A social seller wants to make friends. A business seller wants to earn the right to profitable business. For social selling, it uses my book metaphor, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. For business selling, I use the Harvard Business Review and a downturn provoke your customer. So social sellers want you to be my friend. Business sellers want to earn the right to profitable business. Well, which one is it, Andy? Well, it's both. There's no tyranny of the or here. Tyranny of the or is false alternatives. We need both to open up new accounts. The problem I've noticed over the years is the social selling becomes so important and the business selling so de-emphasized, we don't open new accounts, and nor do we approach existing customers the way we ought to. Now, the planning piece, and this is just an overview, like each of these subjects can be a separate seminar or webinar. Do you have an entrepreneurial sales culture? We just talked about one of the elements of it, having business and social selling. We'll talk a little bit about forward-looking KPIs, key performance indicators, forecasting the time needed for new business development, accountability, your CRM, and the process you use, including the battle plans. And again, you could download the battle plan, and at the end of this short webinar, there'll be time for questions. So let's turn to what can you do in urgency closing sales right now. Let's look at a couple of quick things you could do with increasing sales to existing customers. The first thing you might look at, and this again depends upon the type of business you have, is stretching the order. Could we add 10%? So this is appropriate for companies that have many items or services that they could sell. The customer calls to order A, but they don't order B, C, and D. I've seen that many salespeople, they just take the order and they process it, particularly if it comes in via email. What we need to do is call the customer and remind them of the other things we have. Now, I've tracked this with clients where we put a real strong focus on it, and we really can build sales just by talking to the customer when an order comes in. The next thing we could do is ask for introductions. First of all, to colleagues within the company. Are we selling all the departments or divisions that we currently could be selling? And then this would take a little bit more effort, but could we be introduced to colleagues in other companies? So it's important to use a sense of urgency when we have access. When we have access when they place an order. Let's talk a moment about the magic moment of access. What is our process in the magic moment? So you've met a client's needs, which could include you sent them a quote, a blueprint, a sample, new information, right? Now the client's delighted. They tell you they're delighted. They're communicating with you. They don't have any further needs. You ask them, and now you have a magic moment of access. This is with existing clients. What do? Well, as described earlier, one of the things you could do is break the pigeonhole and ask them about buying other items. This will predictably increase sales. Where you have a line of items, I think this could be worth plus 10% minimum. And the other thing you could do is ask for an introduction. Now, why is it important to ask for introduction? It's because your big fans are the superhighway for growth. Let's look at a quick story, Sally's story. This was a client that did about $35 million in sales, and Sally, out of a team of 15 salespeople, she did by herself. She covered half of the sales, which was with a Fortune 100 company. So we had the assignment, everybody was going to ask for a warm introduction. A couple of weeks later, in a one-to-one accountability meeting, because that's really important here, that there be accountability meetings, I asked Sally, hey, Sally, how did it go? Did you get any warm introductions at the Fortune 100 company? No, she says. Oh, okay, how many people did you ask? Nobody. Nobody? Did you know that we all had the assignment that we were going to get warm introductions? Oh, yeah, I know. Well, what happened? So Andy gets very animated. Andy, you don't understand. When I was hired 22 years ago, my job was to wait for the phone to ring. When that Fortune 100 client called me, I would drive over there. I would learn the problems, recruit the resources needed in the company, get the factory involved, solve the problem, go back to my desk and wait for the phone to ring. I said, I got it, Sally. Here's the problem. You're blocking the superhighway. You're the only person who calls on this Fortune 100 company. And if you don't get warm introductions, nobody did. Well, this story has a happy ending because we told Sally, she had a choice. Either she could get warm introductions or we had to move her into another position where, P.S., she wouldn't have earned as much money. So the happy ending is 2 weeks later, she had a warm introduction. So this is an important takeaway for you. In addition to stretching the order, are you asking big fans for introductions in the magic moment of access? By the way, another magic moment of access is if you have an order and the client moves up the delivery date or the implementation date. That's another magic moment you've got. So your big fans are one of your biggest, strongest selling assets and can help you predictably increase your sales. Let's look at become the expert. You should be a student. Always look for best practices and share them. Because we want our brand to be trusted advisor, consultant. So we do postings, for instance, on LinkedIn. And maybe we do webinars like this webinar. We're trying to open a door in the prospect's mind. Again, this is a way to predictably increase sales. We want to earn thinking minutes. Thinking minutes are processing minutes when the prospect is seriously thinking about doing business with us. Now, this prospect, maybe we had a great meeting with this prospect and they don't want to take another meeting. They will not allocate time for a sales presentation, but they may have 5 to 10 minutes for wisdom. So the recommendation is always lead with wisdom. Always lead with wisdom. Is wisdom part of your brand? If you want to predictably increase sales, lead with wisdom and make it part of your brand. Now, what do I mean by wisdom? Short, insightful ideas that the prospect can immediately use to improve their well-being and doesn't require them to buy from us. It's my hope that in these webinars, and I thank you for coming, there's some wisdom you take away. And that might be one of the reasons you come. You're not looking for a radical new selling system, maybe, although we offer it. You're looking for a couple of great ideas that you can do immediately or just remind you of things that you used to do. Let's talk about PIKs for a moment. Payments in kind. A payment in kind is what the prospect does. As an example, to show that they're serious. As an example, if they fill out a credit application, they're probably serious. If they introduce you, if you're not talking to the CEO and they introduce you to the CEO, then that's probably a sign they're serious about doing business. To predictably grow your sales, earn the right to PIKs, and manage by PIKs, and do a pipeline review. We once had a salesperson who wasn't succeeding, had 7 million in the pipeline, needed 1 million to hit their number, 14% close ratio, wasn't coming anywhere near. When we did a PIK review, in other words, what's the evidence that the prospect is committed to the process, we realized they only had $700,000. Most of it was just price shopping. Let's switch our focus for a moment to planning, to accountability and measurement. If we don't set goals and measure them, sometimes, we just don't accomplish them. So stretch sales to existing customers if that's valid for your business. Can we add 10% on average? Can we track it? Engage your big fans. Target 2 warm introductions a quarter. So let's say there's 10 sales team members in your company, and each of them get 2 a quarter, 8 a year. That's 80 new conversations a year. You probably are going to be drowning in opportunity. Now, when you approach this from an accountability basis, there's 2 ways to do it. Do or die, best efforts. Best efforts, first quarter, you made your best efforts, you got 2. All right, you didn't get 2. You'll try again to get 2 in the next quarter. You didn't get 2 in the second quarter, you make your best effort. You can get 0 with best efforts. What you need is do or die, which means if you don't get it in the first quarter, you need 4 in the second quarter. That's do or die. That's accountability. Become the expert. Could you do a monthly webinar? Maybe get 5, 10 new contacts in your pipeline from doing a monthly webinar. Another way to frame this is to have a suggested target of at least 20% of your pipeline is new opportunity. In 2008, we were hired by an architectural firm who had got hit pretty hard by the 2007 recession. Their headcount had dropped from about 60 to 16. This was the target we set, the super target we set. The pipeline, 20% has to be new opportunity, qualified by PIKs, and it led to, within a year, 3 years of 50% increase in sales. And now they have about 105 employees. And build your prospect list prudently. Now, earlier I acknowledged that some people just don't have time to do this, but I think it's a great practice because you never know when a black swan event is going to occur and you might lose a key customer. This is obviously a colder approach. It's not going to be for everyone, though I recommend it as a strategy to defeat black swans. So I would add names every week, 5 a day, 25, qualified by researching they're in your strike zone. And then use email and or LinkedIn to send high value content. In other words, wisdom, stuff they could use immediately, establishing your brand as an expert. Now, if you use email campaigns like with Constant Contact or LinkedIn, track the openers. If they have 3, 4 or more opens, they probably merit attention, which could then justify sending snail mail packages with selling tools, which we'll discuss in a moment. And use handwritten notes. It's a great combination to start turning some of these cold prospects into people who will talk to you. I had this work very, very well for me, particularly in December, a slow time, and hopefully we'll close at least one of the new ones this month. Now let's talk about the content that we send. This goes back to planning. So this is not a one and done. One of the things I'd be glad to send you if you'd like it is to see, I have a case book of 12 case histories of success. The table of contents lays them out. Let's take a look at one of them. This is the architect. State the problem, the background, the solution, the outcome, and ideally the evidence. So for these 12 cases, I have a link either to a video testimonial or to a written testimonial. Then again, you may have a brochure that you could send out. In our case, we have some books we can share. If you'd like to see any of this material, let me know. So to review, now this is not one and done. This is big picture stuff. Entrepreneurial sales culture, do or die versus best efforts, business selling and social selling, forward-looking KPIs. For instance, 20% of the pipeline is new opportunity. Using a CRM, adherence to manage the process. The proving materials, which I just reviewed. Let's just spend a moment talking about the forecasting the effort needed. If you have a target of so much growth, let's say 20% is new business, you know the dollar sales needed, and if you divide it by the average new sale, you have an idea of the number of new customers needed. Well, if you have a statistics on closing ratio, new customers needed divided by closing ratio equals the new qualified prospects we need to put in the pipeline. Again, this is an overview, and I would be glad to discuss with you subsequently any of these matters. So just to review, 5 ways to predictably grow sales, close fast-growing customers, increase sales to existing customers by stretching the sale, engage your big fans, look for introductions, become the expert, build your prospect list prudently. Now, one more aspect of planning is process. I'll cover this more in another seminar, but I just want to mention this very briefly, and I have short videos I could send if you'd like more information. But your standard sales call is really important to working and closing opportunity. There are three parts to your standard sales call. 1 to 7 sets up the serious conversation, 8 to 12 is your fact finding, and 13 to 18 manages the opportunity to get to step 17, which is either closing the sale or your payment in kind. And then having a battle plan for the longer term opportunity to develop where it merits thoughtfulness. Again, you could download this if you want to. There's a PDF attached. Well, we know Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'd like you to think about your takeaways, and in a moment, we'll have about 5 minutes of questions. And if you want any of the content that we discussed, send me an email to andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. Just as an announcement, please join us for our 2:15 webinar, our next free webinar, Increase Sales Team ROI. So we have about 5 minutes for questions. There's a question box, so you could, I think, chat at the bottom. If you have any questions, just chat them up, put them in there, and I'll do my best to take a shot. And by the way, if you want proving material, information about our book, a free consulting session, also let me know what you'd like to have covered in future webinars. All right, a question. I don't ask my customers to do things for me. I do things for them. Won't asking for, I guess what you call PIKs, favors, won't that ruin the relationship? Well, if it's purely a social relationship, it might be disruptive, but certainly not for a business relationship. And I would add here that one of the challenges I've seen over the years is that salespeople have social relationships and not business relationships. How long does it take to be seen as an expert? I think it's a tough question to answer, but I think if you send one or two, snippets of wisdom, that will cause someone to be engaged. They're going to, it's your brand. They're going to remember it. If you ask customers what are their best practices, to become an expert, won't they consider this nosy, none of your business? Maybe. This goes back to what kind of relationship that you have. I think obviously you would try it first where you have the best relationships, but you have to use your judgment. What do numbers look like when you do the colder outreach? I think the question here is, what's the conversion ratio? I think if you get 1 in 10 and 1 or 20 people interacting with you by LinkedIn or email, that's fantastic. What if we don't have any testimonials? I don't think my customers would give them to me. Well, I can tell you that this has come up many times over the years, and I don't think I've met a market yet where we can't get testimonials. One I'll mention was engineers. These are people who said, I went to school to learn how to be an engineer, not how to sell. And they said, there's no way we can get testimonials. Our customers will never give them to us. I think we got 40 or 50. I'll take one more question here. Is it reasonable to have 20% of your pipeline with new customers? Is this going to be harder to close than your regular customers? Is it worth the time? I think the key here is using the PIK method, the payment in kind. If there's a payment in kind, I think that it certainly is doable and it's worth it, but you got to work for it. You need like a strong standard sales call. Your approach, your mindset is going to be so much different. You're going to have to lead with wisdom and earning the right to the business. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you. If you have any questions, please email me at andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. If you want any of the materials, let me know. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Bye now.